Theosophie by Besant. Introduction. The term Theosophie is derived from two Greek etymons, theos, denoting God, and sophia, signifying wisdom, and consequently translates to God wisdom or divine wisdom. Any lexicon will proffer its signification: a pretension to a direct knowledge of God and of spirits, a definition which, while not inaccurate, is meager and affords but a limited conception of the vastitude encompassed by the term, whether historically or practically considered. The acquisition of a direct knowledge of God constitutes, as we shall discern when addressing the religious aspect of Theosophy, the ultimate objective of all Theosophy, precisely as it is the very heart and life of all genuine religion. This represents the supreme knowledge, the cognition of Him by whom all else is known. Nevertheless, the lower knowledge, that of the knowable residuum and the methodologies for apprehending it, figures prominently within theosophical study. This is entirely natural, for the supreme knowledge must be attained by each individual for himself, and little can be effected by another, save by indicating the path, inspiring the exertion, and establishing the example. Conversely, the lower knowledge may be imparted through tomes, lectures, and conversation, being transmissible from mouth to ear. The mysteries. This interior or esoteric dimension of religion is discovered within all the great faiths of the world, declared with varying degrees of explicitness, yet always existing as the heart of the religion, beyond all dogmas which constitute the exoteric aspect. Where the exoteric side propounds a dogma to the intellect, the esoteric proffers a truth to the spirit. The former is perceived and defended by reason, while the latter is apprehended by intuition, that faculty transcending reason for which the philosophy of the West is now groping. In the religions that have vanished, it was disseminated in the mysteries, in the sole manner by which it can be taught, by providing instruction on how to pursue the methods that unfold the life of the spirit more rapidly than that life unfolds through natural and unassisted evolution. We ascertain from classical authors that within the mysteries the dread of death was obliterated, and that the objective was not the fabrication of a virtuous man, for only he who was already virtuous was admissible, but the transmutation of the good man into a god. Such mysteries existed as the core of the religions of antiquity and only gradually disappeared from Europe between the 4th and 8th centuries, when they ceased for want of pupils. We may discern numerous vestiges of the Christian mysteries in the early Christian writers, particularly in the works of Saint Clement of Alexandria and of Origen, under the appellation of the mysteries of Jesus. The stipulation of high morality was established here, as in the Greek mysteries. Those who for a long time have been conscious of no transgression, let them draw near. Indications of their origin and existence are discovered in the New Testament, wherein the Christ is said to have taught his disciples secretly, "Unto you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God, but to others in parables," and these teachings, Origen maintains, were transmitted in the mysteries of Jesus. St. Paul also declares that we speak wisdom among them that are perfect, two terms utilized in the mysteries. Islam possesses its secret teachings, reputedly derived from Ali, the son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad, to be discovered through meditation and a discipline of life, methods taught among the Sufis. Buddhism maintains its Sangha, within which, again by meditation and a discipline of life, the inner truth is to be located. Hinduism, in both its scriptures and its current tenets, asserts the existence of the supreme and the lower knowledge. The latter is to be acquired by instruction, while the former is attained, once more, by meditation and a discipline of life. It is this characteristic which renders the supreme knowledge esoteric. It is not deliberately veiled and concealed, but rather it cannot be imparted. It can only be gained by the unfolding of a faculty, of a power to cognize, of a mode of consciousness latent in all men, yet not sufficiently developed in the course of normal evolution. This manifests sporadically in the mystic, often in an erratic fashion and frequently accompanied by hysteria, yet even then it is nonetheless an indication, for the clear-sighted and unprejudiced, of a new departure in the long evolution of human consciousness. It is brought to the surface at times by exceptional purity. The pure in heart shall see God. Startling eruptions of it into ordinary existence are observed in such instances of sudden conversion as are recorded by Professor James. The spiritual consciousness is a reality. Its witness is found in all religions, and it is stirring in many today, just as it has stirred in all ages. Its evolution in the individual can only be gently and deliberately accelerated, ahead of normal evolution, by the meditation and the discipline of life alluded to above. For esotericism in religion is not a doctrine, but a stage of consciousness. It is not an instruction, but a life. Hence the complaint voiced by many that it is elusive and indefinite. It appears so to those who have not experienced it, for only that which has been experienced in consciousness can be known to consciousness. Esoteric methods can be taught, but the esoteric knowledge to which they conduce, when successfully followed and lived, must be won by each individual for himself. We may assist in removing obstacles to vision, yet a man can only see with his own eyes. The primary meaning. Theosophy constitutes this direct knowledge of God. The quest for this is the mysticism or esotericism, common to all religions, cast by Theosophy into a scientific form, as observed in Hinduism, Buddhism, Roman Catholic Christianity, and Sufism. Like these, it teaches in a quite lucid and definite manner the methods of achieving first-hand knowledge by unfolding the spiritual consciousness, and by evolving the organs through which that consciousness can function on our earth. Once more, the methods of meditation and of a discipline of life. Hence, it is identical to the science of the self, the science of the eternal which forms the core of Hinduism. It is the knowledge of God which is eternal life, representing the essence of Christianity. It is not a novel entity, but resides within all religions, and thus we find the late eminent Orientalist Max Muller composing his renowned work on Theosophy or psychological religion. The secondary meaning. Theosophy, in a secondary sense, the aforementioned being the primary, is the corpus of doctrine obtained by separating the beliefs common to all religions from the peculiarities, specialties, rites, ceremonies, and customs which distinguish one religion from another. It presents these common truths as a consensus of world beliefs, forming, in their entirety, the wisdom religion or the universal religion, the source from which all separate religions originate, the trunk of the tree of life from which they all branch forth. The appellation Theosophy, which, as we have stated, is Greek, was first employed by Ammonius Saccas in the 3rd century after Christ, and has persisted ever since in the history of religion in the West, denoting not only mysticism but also an eclectic system, which accepts truth wherever it is to be found and regards its outer trappings with little concern. It appeared in its present configuration in America and Europe in 1875, at the time when comparative mythology was being utilized as an effective weapon against Christianity. By transforming it into comparative religion, it constructed the researches and discoveries of archaeologists and antiquarians into bulwarks of defense for the adherents of religion, rather than leaving them as missiles of attack for its adversaries. Comparative mythology. The excavation of ancient cities, the opening of sepulchres, and the translation of archaic manuscripts of both defunct and extant religions demonstrated conclusively the fact that all the great religions which exist and have existed resembled each other in their most salient features. Their principal doctrines, the outlines of their morality, the narratives which clustered around their founders, their symbols, and their ceremonies closely resembled one another. The facts were incontrovertible, for they were inscribed upon ancient temples and recorded within archaic texts. Indeed, as research was further pursued, the evidence became increasingly voluminous. Even amongst the most primitive of tribal societies, vestiges were discovered of similar doctrines, traditions of sacred verities obscured by the crudities of animism and fetishism. How might one account for such resemblances? What was their import regarding Christianity? Evolution served then as the open sesame of science, and the response to these interrogations was not long delayed. Religion was deemed a product of evolution. From the obscure ignorance of primal savages, who anthropomorphized the dreaded forces of nature, had evolved the inspiring creeds and splendid philosophies which had enthralled and civilized mankind. The tribal medicine men had been exalted into the founders of religions. The teachings of the saints and prophets were but the sublimation of the hysterical ravings of semi-epileptic visionaries. The synthesis of natural forces, a synthesis wrought by man's magnificent intellect, had been transmuted through emotion into the concept of deity. Such was the response offered by comparative mythology to the alarmed interrogations of men and women who perceived the edifices of their faith disintegrating around them, abandoning them to the glacial gales of doubt. Concurrently, the concept of immortality faced an existential threat, and although intuition whispered, "Not all of me shall die," physiology had usurped the domain of psychology, demonstrating the cerebrum as the progenitor of thought, which was born with the brain, matured with it, suffered disease with it, and decayed with it. Did it not ultimately perish with it? Agnosticism burgeoned and flourished. What could man ascertain beyond that which his senses might discover, beyond that which his intellect might comprehend? Such was the condition of educated thought in the final quarter of the 19th century. The current generation can scarcely conceive of that veritable eclipse of faith. Comparative religion. Into this European atmosphere, Theosophie made its sudden advent, asserting the gnosis in opposition to agnosticism and comparative religion against comparative mythology. It proclaimed that humanity had not depleted its faculties in the employment of the senses and the intellect, for transcending these lay the intuition and the infallible witness of the spirit, that the existence of these powers was a demonstrable fact, and that the testimony of the spiritual consciousness was as indubitable as that of the intellectual and the sensuous. It acknowledged every datum unearthed by archaeologists and antiquarians, but maintained that these facts were amenable to an interpretation entirely distinct from that proffered by the adversaries of religion, and that while the facts remained facts, the explication was merely a hypothesis. It posited, in counterpoise to this hypothesis, another which was equally explanatory of the facts, namely, that the universality of religious doctrines, ethics, narratives, symbols, and ceremonies, and even the traces thereof amongst savages, originated from the derivation of all religions from a singular nucleus, from a brotherhood of divine men. This brotherhood, it was asserted, dispatched one of its members into the world periodically to establish a new faith, containing the same essential verities as its predecessors, yet fluctuating in form in accordance with the exigencies of the era and the capacities of the populace to whom the messenger was sent. It was patent that either hypothesis would elucidate the admitted facts. By what means might a determination between them be achieved? Theosophy invoked the testimony of history. It noted that the halcyon days of each religion were its incipient days, and that the teachings of the messenger were never surpassed by subsequent adherents of the faith, whereas the converse must necessarily have obtained had religion been the product of evolution. The Hindus founded themselves upon their Upanishads, the Zoroastrians upon the teachings of the Prophet, the Buddhists upon the sayings of the Lord Buddha, the Hebrews upon Moses and the prophets, the Christians upon the Christ, and the Mohammedans upon those of their great prophet. Subsequent religious literature was comprised of commentaries, dissertations, and arguments, rather than novel departures of greater inspiration than the original. Inspiration is invariably sought in later epochs in the sayings of the founder and in the teachings of his immediate disciples. Manu, Vyasa, Zarathustra, the Buddha, the Christ, these figures tower above humanity, commanding the love and reverence of mankind generation after generation. There are many messengers, the religions are their messages. Theosophy cites all these instances as evidence that its hypothesis is the true explanation of the facts, that it is no longer a mere hypothesis, indeed, but a truth affirmed by history. In opposition to this magnificent array of messengers with their messages, comparative mythology cannot adduce a solitary historical proof of a religion that has evolved from savagery into spirituality and philosophy. Its hypothesis is effectively disproved by history. The theosophical perspective is now so prevalently admitted that the public does not realize how triumphant the contradictory theory once stood. When Theosophy again entered the arena of global intellect in 1875, mounted upon its novel charger, the Theosophical Society. However, any who wish to comprehend the conditions then existing should consult the literature of comparative mythology published during the preceding century, from the voluminous works of Delors and Dupuy, through Higgins' Anacalypsis, to the tomes of Hargrave Jennings, Furlong, and a dozen others, speaking with a dogmatism that induced the reader to believe that the statements made were founded upon facts which no educated person could deny. Those who immersed themselves in that labyrinth of discussions in their youth, who lost themselves in its endless and intricate windings, and who beheld their faith consumed by the minotaur of comparative mythology, they know, and only they can fully appreciate, the profundity of the relief when the modern Ariadne, the broadly misunderstood and maligned Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, proffered the clue which guided them through the mazes of the labyrinth, and armed them with the sword of the secret, doctrine with which to slay the monster. It is worthy of incidental note that antiquated Christianity, which held that all mankind had descended from Adam, created in 4004 BC, had retained a tradition of a primeval revelation bestowed upon Adam and disseminated by his posterity to all regions of the globe. Man, inheriting original sin from his ancestor, had corrupted this, yet traces of it were to be discovered in the grains of truth concealed within the husks of heathen religions. This view, however, notwithstanding the germ of truth it contained, was summarily dismissed by the educated, who understood that the human race had existed for hundreds of thousands of years, at the very least, rather than for a mere span of 6,000. Unity of religions. The conclusion of the entire situation is that the fact of the universality of religious belief proves deleterious to any religion which claims for itself a unique and isolated position. In such a stance, it is exposed to assault from all quarters, and its claim is easily refuted. Yet, this very fact constitutes a fortification when all religions stand together, when they present themselves as a brotherhood, children of a single progenitor, the divine wisdom. This perspective grows increasingly satisfactory as we observe that each religion possesses its own distinct resonance, making its own specific contribution to the forces laboring for the evolution of man. As we perceive their disparities, in addition to their similarities, we discern a scheme of human pedagogy. Just as when we hear a splendid chord, we sense that a master musician has synthesized the notes with a full knowledge of the value of each. Hinduism proclaims the one immanent life in everything, and hence the solidarity of all existence, the duty of each to each, encapsulated in the untranslatable term dharma. Zoroastrianism strikes the chord of purity, purity of surroundings, of body, and of mind. Hebraism resonates with righteousness. Egypt establishes science as its word of power. Buddhism asserts right knowledge. Greece exhales the spirit of beauty. Rome speaks of law. Christianity promulgates the intrinsic value of the individual and exalts the virtue of self-sacrifice. Islam proclaims with resonance the unity of the divine. Indubitably, the globe is enriched by each, and we can ill afford to discard a single gem from our diadem of global faiths. From the exquisite spectacle of their manifold beauty and the spiritual significance of such diversity, there emerges within our consciousness a perception of the reality of the Great Brotherhood, alongside its function in directing spiritual evolution. Such profound unity, juxtaposed with such exquisite and fecund diversity, cannot be attributed to mere happenstance or fortuitous coincidence. Rather, it must be the consequence of a design deliberately adopted and vigorously executed. Method of study. Inasmuch as the theosophical system of thought constitutes an immense, all-encompassing synthesis of verities, addressing the divine, the cosmos, and humanity, as well as their reciprocal relations, it is optimal to categorize its exposition under 4 distinct headings, corresponding to a patently rational perspective on the human condition. One may regard man as possessing a physical form, an emotional constitution, and an intellect. Through these vehicles, he, an eternal spirit, manifests himself within this temporal realm. These 3 provinces of human nature, as we may designate them, correspond directly to his primary activities: science, ethics combined with aesthetics, and philosophy. Through his sensory faculties, man observes surrounding phenomena and corroborates his observations via experimentation. Through his cerebral capacity, he chronicles and organizes these observations, formulates inductions, constructs hypotheses, validates said hypotheses by devising pivotal experiments, and thereby attains a knowledge of nature and a comprehension of her laws. Thus, he establishes sciences, those resplendent consequences of the intelligent utilization of the physical organs upon the material world. Consequently, we must examine Theosophie strictly as science. Man's emotional nature exhibits sentiments and desires, feelings engendered by external contacts, which elicit either gratification or distress. These interactions awaken within him specific desires, cravings to replicate the pleasurable experience and to avert the recurrence of suffering. We shall ascertain, when we proceed to address these matters, that the deep-seated yearning for happiness, instilled in every sentient entity, impels him to align himself ultimately in harmony with law, that is, to enact the right and to abjure the wrong. The manifestation of this harmony within existence, in our interpersonal relations and in the architecture of our own character, is right conduct. The manifestation of this identical harmony within matter is right form, or beauty. Therefore, we must investigate Theosophie as morality art. Man's intellect necessitates that his environment, regarding both life and matter, be intelligible. It exacts order, rationality, and logical explication. It cannot dwell amidst chaos without enduring tribulation. It must comprehend and understand if it is to exist in tranquility. Accordingly, we must analyze Theosophie as philosophy. Yet these three, science, morality, art, and philosophy, do not fully satiate our nature. The religious consciousness persistently obtrudes itself across all nations, all climes, and all epochs. It refuses to be silenced, and it will subsist upon the husks of superstition if denied the bread of truth. The spirit that is man will not cease his quest for the universal spirit that is God, and the divine responses, partial, yet bearing the promise of plenitude, constitute religions. Hence, we must study Theosophy as religion. Under these four headings, all theosophical teachings of paramount importance to human life and conduct may be expounded. There remain but a few indications regarding the practical application of these principles to social dilemmas, and a mere statement, for within the limited compass of this treatise, no more is feasible, of the expansive vistas of the past and the future revealed to us by Theosophy. All categorizations that seek to fragment the truly indivisible spirit, that spark from the universal fire, are unsatisfactory and tend to veil from us the unity of the consciousness that constitutes ourself. Senses, emotions, and intellect are but facets of a solitary diamond, aspects of a single spirit. Spiritual life, or religion, should function as a synthesis of science, morality, art, and philosophy, for these are merely facets of religion itself. Religion should permeate all disciplines, just as spirit permeates all forms. Our self is singular, not multiple, notwithstanding that its superabundant vitality expresses itself in multitudinous ways. Thus, although I partition my subject into distinct sections for the sake of clarity, I entreat my reader to recall that classification is a means and not an end, that classifications are manifold, whereas consciousness is unitary, and that while, for the purpose of lucid explication, we may avoid confusing the persons, we must ever bear in mind the imperative to avoid dividing the substance. Chapter 1. Theosophy as the science of superphysical spheres. The ancient method of inquiry was to enunciate universals and to descend from them to particulars. This remains the optimal approach for the earnest and philosophic student. The contemporary method, conversely, commences with particulars and ascends from them to universals. For the modern reader, who has not yet resolved to undertake a rigorous examination of a subject, this constitutes the more accessible path, for it reserves the most arduous portion for the conclusion. As this treatise is intended for the general reader, I shall adhere to this latter method. Theosophy accepts the method of science, observation, experiment, the arrangement of ascertained facts, induction, hypothesis, deduction, verification, and the assertion of discovered truth, yet it vastly expands the scope thereof. It perceives the totality of existence as comprising but two factors, life and form, or, as some designate them, spirit and matter, and others time and space. For spirit is God's motion, whereas matter is his stillness. Both find their union within him. Since the root of spirit is his life, and the root of matter is the universal ether, these represent the two aspects of the one eternal, transcending space and time. While conventional science restricts matter to the tangible, theosophical science extends it through manifold gradations, intangible to the physical, yet tangible to superphysical senses. It has been ascertained that the prerequisite for comprehending the physical universe is the possession of a physical body. Certain components of this body have evolved into organs of sense, eyes, ears, etc., through which the perception of external objects is rendered possible. Other components have evolved into organs of action, hands, feet, and the remainder, through which contact with external objects may be achieved. It discerns that, historically, physical evolution has been affected by the efforts of life to employ its nascent powers, and that the endeavor to exercise an inherent faculty has gradually molded matter into an organ through which that faculty may be more completely utilized. To invert Buchner's assertion, we do not walk because we possess legs. Rather, we possess legs because we desire to move. One may trace the evolution of legs from the transient pseudopodia of the amoeba, through the development of permanent protrusions from bodies, culminating in the legs of man. All were gradually formed by the efforts of the living creature to achieve locomotion. As William Kingdon Clifford observed regarding the colossal saurians of a past epoch, some desired to fly, and they subsequently became birds. The will to live, that is, to desire, to think, to act, constitutes the impetus behind all evolution. The Theosophist extends this identical principle into higher realms, positing that if such exist, and if consciousness is to cognize any sphere other than the physical, it must possess a body composed of matter pertaining to the sphere it seeks to investigate. Moreover, this body must possess senses, developed by the same imperative of life to see, to hear, and so forth. That there should exist other spheres, and other bodies through which those spheres may be cognized, is no more intrinsically implausible than the existence of a physical sphere and the physical bodies through which we perceive it. The occultist, the student of the operations of the divine mind in nature, asserts that such spheres exist, and that he possesses and employs such bodies. The following statements, with one exception which shall be noted in its proper place, are proffered as the results of investigations conducted in such spheres through the use of such bodies by the writer and other occultists. We all received the general outline from highly evolved members of our humanity. Subsequently, we have verified its veracity stage by stage and have bridged numerous lacunae through our own researches. We, therefore, maintain that we possess the right to affirm, based upon our own first-hand experience extending over a period of 23 years in one instance and 25 in another, that superphysical research is feasible. We assert that it is as reliable as physical research and should be conducted in similar manners. Furthermore, we acknowledge that investigators are subject to errors in both physical and superphysical spheres for analogous reasons, and that these errors should prompt more rigorous inquiry rather than the cessation thereof. A table of correspondences. The following table delineates the spheres related to and including our Earth, the bodies utilized in investigating them, and the states of consciousness manifested through them by their possessor, the man. The eternal man, a fragment of the life of God, is designated the monad, a unity. He is veritably a son of God, created in his image and expressing his life in three modes: by the aspect of will, the aspect of wisdom, and the aspect of creative activity. He resides in his own sphere, a spark within the divine fire, and projects a ray, a current of his life, which embodies itself within the five spheres of manifestation. This ray, appropriating an atom of matter from each of the three higher of these spheres, manifests as the human spirit, replicating the three aspects of the monad: will, wisdom, and creative activity. At a specific stage of evolution, he reveals himself as the human ego, the individualized self. He commences his extensive journey as a mere seed of life, and, never forfeiting his identity, traverses that long pilgrimage, unfolding all the powers of the monad that lie latent within him, like the tree within the seed. As he masters his kingdom of matter, his parent monad infuses into him increasing measures of life, and derives from him increasing knowledge of the worlds in which he resides. However, entry into the three highest manifested spheres does not suffice for the acquisition of full knowledge and full power within our solar system. Two spheres yet remain, and the process of immersion into matter continues. The spirit fortifies himself for his labor by appropriating a molecule of the coarser matter from the lowest sphere he has hitherto entered. He attaches to this an atom from the fourth manifested sphere of denser matter, and one from the fifth, the lowest, our physical sphere. He is to acquire bodies, formed around these permanently appropriated particles of matter, through which he may be capable of cognizing and acting upon the five manifested spheres. It shall be demonstrated that his lower bodies, constituting what is termed his personality, are discarded at and subsequent to what we designate as death, and are renewed for each successive birth. Conversely, the higher bodies, constituting his individuality, endure throughout this extensive pilgrimage, a significant fact pertinent to the possibility of recalling the past. The aforementioned facts are tabulated hereafter. An immortal individuality, a mortal personality, the trinities of religions, the three persons of Christianity. As manifested within a solar system, they appear as a triad by virtue of functional difference when perceived from below. The entire solar system may be termed the body of the Logos, and the Sun his physical body, yet they encapsulate but a fragment of him. Man created in the image of God. His aspects, will, wisdom, and activity, or power, knowledge, love, and creativeness, are demonstrated in the embodied reproduction of himself as will, intuition, and intellect. The seven are designated from below upwards: solid, liquid, gaseous, etheric, superetheric, subatomic, atomic. It may be asked, what is the objective of this descent into matter? What does the monad derive from it? Omniscient in his own sphere, he is blinded by matter in the spheres of manifestation, being incapable of responding to their vibrations. Just as a man who cannot swim, when cast into deep water, drowns, yet may learn to navigate freely within it, so it is with the monad. At the conclusion of his pilgrimage, he shall be free of the solar system, empowered to function in any region thereof, to create at will, and to traverse at pleasure. Every power that he unfolds through denser matter, he retains in perpetuity under all conditions. The implicit has become explicit, the potential the actual. It is his own will to live in all spheres, and not merely in one, that impels him into manifestation. The physical body. The actual unfolding of consciousness is best traced from below, inasmuch as the physical body is the entity first organized as its instrument for knowledge, and it is through this medium that consciousness reveals itself within the physical world we know. The emotional nature stimulates the glands and ganglia of the corporeal frame, while the mental faculty enthrones itself over the cerebrospinal system. Concurrently, these aspects proceed with their evolution in the invisible spheres via the stimulus derived from the physical plane. We need not dwell upon the evolution of the dense physical body, as such matters fall within the purview of physical science. Here, human consciousness operates automatically. The man no longer requires the necessity of directing physical processes, for they proceed by habit, the consequence of prolonged pressure exerted by consciousness. The subtler portion of the physical anatomy, the etheric double, permeates the dense matter and extends marginally beyond it across the entire surface. Its distinct sense organs manifest as vortices upon its own periphery, situated opposite the crown of the head, the point between the eyebrows, the throat, the heart, the spleen, the solar plexus, and the base of the spine. Regarding the vortex located in the lower region of the pelvic basin, this is unutilized, save in the practice of black magic. These vortices, technically designated as chakrams, signifying wheels, derived from their visual characteristic, are aroused into activity during the course of occult discipline, and they establish a bridge between the physical and astral spheres, thereby enabling the latter to be integrated within the activity of the waking consciousness. The health of the dense counterpart relies upon the vitality resident within the etheric double, which draws its energy directly from the sun and, at the point of contact with the spleen, fractionates this energy into streams which it conveys to the various organs of the dense body. The surplusage radiates outward, energizing all living creatures within its vicinity. The immediate proximity of a vigorously healthy individual imparts vitality, whereas a constitutionally frail body draws upon the vitality of its surroundings, frequently causing serious depletion to those in close attendance. Physical magnetism, the curative power, etc., represent methods by which this surplus vitality may be beneficially expended. Etheric vision, a physical sight of greater acuity than the norm, may be utilized for the examination of minute objects, such as chemical atoms, or for the study of those nature spirits which employ etheric matter for their lowest vehicles. Fairies, gnomes, brownies, and creatures of that ilk. A marginally increased tenseness of the nerves, induced by excitement, ill health, or alcohol, may render these entities visible. The etheric portion of the brain assumes an active role in dreams, particularly those precipitated by external impressions or by internal pressure originating from the cerebral vessels. Such dreams are customarily dramatic in nature and may embellish any recollection of past events, objects, or persons. In normal, healthy individuals, the etheric aspect of the physical body does not separate from the dense form. However, the greater portion of it may be expelled by anesthetics, and it disengages with facility in the case of persons possessing mediumistic traits, frequently serving as the foundation for materializations. Death constitutes the complete withdrawal from the dense counterpart. In conjunction with the consciousness residing in the higher bodies, it remains associated with these for a varying interval, typically approximating 36 hours post-mortem, whereupon it is cast off by the man as being of no further utility. It subsequently decays pari passu with the dense corpse. The emotional or astral sphere, its worlds and its inhabitants. The astral sphere associated with our Earth comprises two globes with which we need not presently concern ourselves, in addition to the astral world with its inhabitants, and the intermediate or desire world, a division of the astral, the denizens of which exist normally under specific conditions. The entire sphere pertains to that state of consciousness manifesting as feelings, desires, and emotions. These fluctuations in consciousness are accompanied by vibrations within astral matter, and, as astral matter is tenuous and exceedingly rapid in its vibratory motions, these vibrations become visible to astral vision as colors. The passion of anger precipitates vibrations that yield a flash of scarlet, whereas a sensation of devotion or love suffuses the astral body with a blue or rosy hue. Each emotion possesses its appropriate color, for the reason that each is accompanied by its own invariable set of vibrations. The human astral body is naturally composed of astral matter. When accompanying the physical body, which it permeates and beyond which it extends, it manifests as a nebulous cloud or as a defined oval, contingent upon whether its possessor is minimally or significantly developed. Clarity and brilliance of the more delicate colors, augmented definiteness of form, and an increase in magnitude characterize the higher evolution. When the man in his higher bodies withdraws from the physical, as occurs nightly in sleep, the astral body assumes the likeness of the physical form. Astral matter being exceedingly plastic under the influence of thought, a man appears in the astral world in the likeness of himself as he perceives himself, clad in the vestments of which he thinks. A soldier slain in battle, appearing in his astral body to a distant friend, will bear his wounds. A drowned man will appear in dripping garments. While human beings in the astral world normally assume human forms, the inhabitants of that realm who have never possessed physical bodies, such as higher fairies, nature spirits connected with the evolution of plant and animal life, and the like, utilize bodies that are constantly altering their outlines and dimensions. Sportive elementals, as nature spirits are often designated, will occasionally exploit this plasticity of astral matter to expand themselves into monstrous and terrible shapes for the purpose of terrifying untrained intruders into their domain. Certain narcotics, such as hashish, bhang, and opium, as well as extreme alcoholic poisoning, so affect the physical nerves as to render them susceptible to astral vibrations. Subsequently, the patients catch a glimpse of certain inhabitants of the astral world. The horrors which torment a man suffering from delirium tremens are largely attributable to the sight of the loathsome elementals that congregate around places where liquor is vended, feeding upon its exhalations, and which are attracted to him by the effluvia of his own drink-sodden body. All sensations of pleasure and pain within the physical body are due to the presence of the interpenetrating astral vehicle. Should this be expelled by anesthetics or mesmerism, sensation vanishes from the physical form. In sleep, during which the etheric double does not depart from its dense counterpart, the astral may be summoned back with great celerity by any disturbance of the physical body. However, where a significant portion of the etheric matter has also been expelled, the bridge of communication is severed, and a trance state is produced. Under these conditions, the dense body may be seriously mutilated without pain supervening. Pain will, however, manifest as soon as the astral body slips once again into the physical vessel and consciousness returns. It may be posited, in passing, that the normal center of human consciousness at the present stage of evolution resides within the astral body, from which it operates upon the physical. Physical consciousness is now subconscious, if such a bull may be permitted to an Irishwoman. The condition of a person during sleep varies in accordance with his stage of evolution. The undeveloped man, upon leaving the physical body in his higher vehicles, hovers around the locales with which he is familiar. The average man drifts towards persons to whom he is attracted, yet his attention is directed inwards, and he communes with his friends mentally only. At a slightly more advanced stage, his mind becomes exceedingly active and receptive, capable of resolving problems presented to it with greater facility than within the physical body, as evidenced by the common adages. Sleep brings counsel, better sleep on it, and the like. A problem quietly deposited in the mind upon retiring to sleep will generally be found resolved in the morning. Yet, all these individuals do not operate consciously within the astral world. For this to occur, it is requisite that the attention be directed outwards, rather than inwards. Where an individual is pure and self-controlled, exhibiting benevolence within the physical sphere, he is frequently awakened in the astral world by a more advanced being. The procedure entails merely inducing him to direct his attention to his environs, rather than abiding immersed in contemplation. His astral vehicle has evolved and attained organization through his mental and moral endeavors, requiring him merely to awaken to his astral surroundings. His guide elucidates the circumstances and, for a duration, retains him in close proximity. He demonstrates that astral matter yields to his thought, that he may traverse at will and with whatever velocity he desires, that he may pass through stone, submerge into oceans, transit through conflagrations, step beyond a precipice and hover in the ether, provided always that he remains intrepid and assured. Should he forfeit his courage, and only then, is he imperiled, and the imagined injury may repercuss, manifesting upon the physical body as a contusion, an abrasion, or a lesion. Upon mastering these preliminary instructions, and acquiring the capacity to perceive and hear accurately within the astral plane, he is assigned the task of aiding the living and the deceased. He then becomes what is termed an invisible helper, dedicating his nights to succoring the distressed, instructing the unenlightened, and guiding those who have newly entered the astral world through the portal of death. To these latter individuals we must now direct our attention. The desire world, or purgatory. This constitutes that section of the astral realm wherein conditions are specialized for discarnate human beings, who, lacking knowledge, find themselves not free within the astral world, but are rather the spirits in prison alluded to by St. Peter. They are held captive by their own desires, and consequently, the appellation of the desire world is bestowed upon their abode. We have observed that, at the moment of death, the man, arrayed in his subtler bodies, extricates himself from the physical vestment worn during terrestrial life, the coat of skin with which the primal man was clad following his fall into matter, precipitated by his seizure of knowledge. These matters constitute an allegory, as St. Paul remarks regarding the narrative of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar. Having discarded his coat of skin, the man remains himself, precisely as he was whilst clothed within it, and he proceeds to his rightful station in the astral world, the locus for which he has prepared himself. A rearrangement of the matter of his astral body occurs automatically, unless he possesses sufficient knowledge to forestall it. During the existence of the physical body, the astral particles originating from all 7 astral subdivisions of matter circulate freely among themselves, and representatives of every variety are invariably present upon the surface of the astral body. Vision of the entire astral world depends upon the presence, on the surface of the astral body, of particles derived from all 7 subdivisions, which correspond to our solids, liquids, gases, and the 4 states of ether. These particles are not aggregated and fashioned into a specific organ of vision, akin to the physical eye. Rather, when the man directs his attention outwards, he perceives through his entire being, through all these particles, or through such of them as lie in the direction of the object toward which his attention is oriented. If the rearrangement of the astral matter occurs, the substance of each subdivision segregates, and a series of concentric shells is formed, with the densest residing upon the exterior. Consequently, the man can perceive only that subdivision of the astral world to which the outermost shell pertains. The quantity of each variety of matter relies upon the nature of the desires and emotions he has cultivated whilst on earth. Should these have been of a base order, the densest astral matter will be intensely vitalized, and this outermost shell, placing him in contact solely with the lowest subdivision of the astral world, will endure for a protracted period. It disintegrates through gradual starvation by the deprivation of its accustomed gratifications. Thus, a drunkard, a glutton, a sensualist, or a man of violent and brutal passions, having strongly vitalized the densest and coarsest combinations of astral matter through physical indulgence, can be conscious of his surroundings only through these mediums. He perceives only individuals akin to himself and the vilest qualities of those who are of a superior type. His raging passions can find no satiation, for he has forfeited the physical organs by which he erstwhile gratified them. Moreover, these passions are far more violent than previously, for during his physical existence, the majority of the force of the astral vibrations was expended merely in setting in motion the heavy physical particles of matter, and only the residue was experienced as pleasure or pain. Hence, all passions on earth are pale and feeble compared with their violence in the astral world, where, after effortlessly setting in motion the light astral particles, they manifest the entire remainder of their force as pleasure or pain, as a rapture or an agony inconceivable upon the terrestrial plane. This latter state is what religions term hell, and a veritable hell it is regarding suffering, created by the man for his own habitation. Yet it is merely temporary, and might therefore, for Orthodox Christians and Muslims, be more fitly designated as purgatory. The thick stratum of densest matter eventually erodes, and the man loses sight of this sphere of astral life and commences to perceive the subsequent one, having learned, through the melancholy lesson of bitter suffering, that the pleasures he valued on earth are verily wombs of pain. The average individual does not experience this unfortunate post-mortem condition, as he has not drawn much of the densest matter into his astral body whilst on earth, and such matter as he possesses is not strongly vitalized, and thus cannot detain him. If his interests on earth have all been trivial, a cycle of office or domestic drudgery or manual labor, alternating with low, though not vicious, forms of amusement, and if he has cared nothing for broader interests, those of the community and the nation, he will find himself encased by matter of the sixth subdivision of the astral world. He will subsequently be surrounded by the astral counterparts of physical objects, lacking the power to affect them or to participate in the earth life conducted among them. He will, therefore, to employ a colloquialism, find himself exceedingly bored and become prey to an intolerable sense of ennui. It may be posited that this is severe, as most individuals are compelled to spend their lives in drudgery of some nature. Are they to suffer boredom after death, having drudged previously? This is true, yet a modicum of knowledge will obviate this, and for this precise reason, Theosophie is being disseminated far and wide. The labor which sustains the world need not be drudgery, and to deeply religious persons it is not drudgery even now, for all useful work constitutes part of the divine activity, and all workers are organs of that activity, the hands wherewith the divine worker accomplishes his work. Production and distribution, agriculture, mining, manufacturing, commerce, and even the pettiest trade, are God's methods of nourishing humanity, and constitute the means of evolution. When a man or a woman perceives their minor daily tasks as integral portions of the one great work, they are no longer drudges, but co-workers with God. As George Herbert sang, "A servant in this cause / makes drudgery divine. / who sweeps a room as for thy laws / makes that entich action fine." Those who labor thus will encounter no boredom after death, but rather fresh and joyous activity. As for the remainder, they gradually adapt themselves to the new conditions, and are assisted in doing so. They discover that they are relieved of many of the discomforts of earth, and may lead a quite pleasant existence. They remain in contact with their friends on earth, and discover that these are quite companionable during earth's nights, though provokingly indifferent during its days, as Mr. Leadbeater pithily observes. The dead are never for a moment under the impression that they have lost the living, however much the latter may lament the loss of the deceased whom they loved. The individual proceeds through the sixth, fifth, and fourth subdivisions, deriving increasing communion with those he holds dear, until he ascends into the higher stratums. the material heavens conceived by the less enlightened adherents of all faiths. This is the region dedicated to art, literature, science, philanthropy, and the broader pursuits of existence. Activities previously followed in the terrestrial sphere with a degree of self-interest are here continued along habitual lines, utilizing astral reproductions of physical instrumentalities. These very endeavors, when executed with altruistic motives. Do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.